channel for another exciting episode of Killifornia with our friend Todd Wood. Todd, how you doing?
I'm doing amazing. Hello, Bosleyverse. How we
Hello,
doing
yes,
tonight?
yes. And we're here with our friend Rotting Jules. Hello, Dana.
Hello, gentlemen.
And this is a very special episode because it is technically the second um, in a series we three are going to be doing discussing True Detective. And but it's the first one in which we're really getting into the episodes. And tonight is episode one. And I don't know about you guys, but I just watched the first episode again about an hour ago, 45 minutes ago.
Same.
Hmm.
I was literally like listening to it through my headphones while I was waiting. I was like wrapping up. So,
Well, let me ask you both a question to start it right off. In the opening shot, since it's still fresh in your minds, in the opening shot, it's very dark, very shadowy. And for all these years, all the times I've watched the series, it's like, okay, somebody's carrying something. But for all the world, actually, the last time I watched the series, which I was introducing my mom to it over the holidays, actually, and then today, for all the world, it looks to me like it's a shot of somebody helping somebody who's injured through the field,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Right.
do you see that? And
Yeah.
on top of that, and then I'll shut up and let you guys comment on this. I swear it's like it's Marty and Rust. And then the next shot goes to somebody starting sorry, I got my light. Somebody starting the fire.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you guys think of that opening shot? Who is it?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I kind of thought maybe it was um I just don't know. I didn't be honest with you. I didn't think of Marty and Russ. And the thing is, did they mention when they get to the crime scene,
Mhm.
did they even mention the fire?
Yes, they do mention, and Dana, feel free to jump in. They do mention that there were fields of sugarcane, and some were scheduled for burning,
Oh,
and so
yeah.
there's that element, but it's that first shot that honestly, until this time, I thought I didn't. I thought it was somebody bringing the girl's body, right,
Right.
out to the tree, but
Right.
I'm not sure.
Right. That's
What do
really
you think, Dana?
interesting.
I I don't know. I feel like I've watched it twice in like the past 2 weeks, and in my mind that's still what I see, but I feel like that opening part, because it is so dark, I feel like they take that, and then when it's sort of the narrative where Marty's talking about Rust, like in the first episode where he's
Hmm.
kind of explaining their backstory, and you
Hmm.
see Rust smoking a cigarette as he's walking through the sugarcane fields. It's almost like he's in the same place, but at a different time of day, because
Hmm.
the movement and the camera angle is very similar.
Right.
So I could make it up in my head and see both, but it is really dark. I'm gonna have to go back and take screenshots because that's gonna drive me
Yeah.
Yeah,
nuts.
you guys
Right.
take a look at that first shot again and tell
Yeah.
me what you think. Maybe I'm just projecting. And I
Right.
think you'd agree the beauty of this show, and it reminded again watching the first episode, is that you can when a film in particular, something in the visual arts,
Hmm.
particularly cinema, um, when it's more than the sum of its parts, right?
Right.
When you get a subtext, when you all that stuff, that's a thing of beauty when it happens organically, and it's not always invited.
Yeah.
And I think the way this was directed, produced,
Right. Well,
I think that's kind of invited.
perhaps that fire is reflected into the title of the episode, which is the long dark long I'm sorry, the long bright dark is the title for episode one.
Yeah.
So I that maybe that's kind of a hint to it or something like that. How did you guys feel about hearing that theme song for the first time?
Oh my God.
By the
Yeah.
Handsome Family. The song is called "Far from Any Road." I got chills down my spine the first time I saw True Detective, and that song hit. Chills just rolled down my spine.
Every time for me. What about you,
Yeah.
Dana?
Oh yeah, like that song, like as soon as you hear it, it's like even just like those opening beats, it's like you already know what time it is. It's time to go.
There are series that you watch that you never skip the intro. The original Star Trek, for me. Um, Hawaii Five-O, the original. I'm sorry. I'm rewatching that from the time I was a kid, and there's no way I'm not gonna boom, 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 and go through the whole thing. Yeah, yeah. And True Detective is one of those. It's almost like you have to listen to the theme song
Mhm.
because it gets you in there. All the music in the show, but
Yeah.
theme song in particular.
Well, and
Right.
the opening like credits and the artwork, it's when you go frame by frame, the artwork is not only so beautiful, but it's so dimensional in
Mhm.
what aspects it's pulling from all like the entire first season, the way that they sort of combine these different scenes and make all of this imagery. It's like they make something that's really,
Mhm.
really ugly into something that's very magical and beautiful in the opening.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Very
you're
good.
right. And I think it tries to have I think they're going for what you just described. It's initially it's a beauty, and then the closer you look, like the shot of the nude girl with the spiked heels, right?
Yep.
And the spikes on her high heels. And if you recall, a lot of that is stuff from the show, representing stuff from the show. And I think that's representing the strip club that they go to a couple of times.
Mhm.
But those spikes in her skin, when you look closely during the lyric, when I touched her skin, my fingers ran with blood, you begin to see the blood that the spikes are causing by poking into the
Right.
skin. It's just
It's
amazing.
what's interesting is the Handsome Family is basically like an indie group,
Hmm.
Hmm.
right? They have an indie group, which is like the most fitting song for the show for the
Hmm.
first season, and then like they get Leonard Cohen, who was a big time in his heyday, to do the theme for season two. And who do you remember who did season three?
I don't even, to be honest, I don't even remember the song for season three. Do you, Dana?
Yeah, and then they
Nope.
got Eilish. What's her face?
Billie
Billie
Eilish.
Eilish.
Billie Eilish to do season four.
And I kind of like that
Um,
one.
yeah.
No,
But
excuse me. Let me clarify. Theme song,
yeah,
because the season I did not like. I
yeah,
despised that season.
right.
Oh
Um,
my God.
guys, I got some factoids for you.
Oh,
The
please.
first the
There.
first episode aired on January 12th, 2014, and it ran for 60 minutes, which is pretty good for like an HBO show from beginning to end. We all know who the writer was. Anybody want to tell everybody who the writer was?
Nick Pizzolatto,
Nick
Yep.
Pizzolatto. Who was the director? Does anybody know?
Carrie Joji, is it Fukunagi or
I
Fukunawa?
think
Fukunaga.
Yeah.
All
Did
right.
did he did one of the Bond films, right? Was it Spectre?
I think he did.
Yeah. Think about that. Think about that. You know darn well he got a Bond film because of True Detective. He had to,
for sure.
you know. I have four notes, and I've already mentioned the first one, who are the shadowy figures in the opening. But when we get to, I mean, since we're in the part where they, you know, I don't want us to waste time or spend time going through the summary because I by now 12 years now, I think everybody in the world who would even care to watch this,
Right.
what we're doing here, has seen the series more than once. So we don't have to go through, you know, what happens in the story. But I did notice this when they're out there in the field and the girl's body is there with the antlers and everything. The first time we see the little tripods, the devil nets,
Hmm.
as they're called by I call him the cat church minister, I think is the one. Anyway, devil nets. We see the first shot of them. It's on the ground, and then it goes right up to one hanging. And I think of as above, so below. So
Right,
there we have that hermetic principle
right.
right
Uh,
there.
Dana has done some interesting research on the devil nets and has
Oh,
some interesting insights.
tell us.
So I found this image and it's so this was a device that was invented during the Spanish Inquisition, so in the 16th century, and it's called a Judas cradle or culla di guida in Italian, a Judas switch in German, and la veille in French, and it was also known as the Iron Maiden of Nuremberg in Germany. So when I saw the image, because when it's just at its base position, it looks like the devil net. It looks very similar to it, except for this top portion is all metal. Now, what this is right here, it's a method they use it for torture, but it's to impale you
Hmm.
slowly. So this starts slowly going up through your rear end and it slowly impales you and it goes really tall. But when I saw it, I was like, that looks very similar to the devil net. And I just thought that it was interesting in regards to like the Italian history and the French history within the quarter because when I was looking into, what are these devil nets, bird traps? Because obviously they're not really that functional as a bird trap, even. It seems that Pizzolatto kind of what he tells everybody in every interview is he just kind of made it up. And I'm
Right.
like, well, you had to
Well,
get it. You had to get something from somewhere, right?
I did make a discovery as far as the bird trap thing. When it's hanging up in the tree, it's way more effective as a bird trap than it is on the ground because the bird can fly into it, but it can't fly out of it. Essentially, it has to walk out then fly. If it's on the ground, the bird can kind of accidentally wander out.
It's like the Roach motels. They can check in, but they can't check out.
Right, right. Now I've seen some really crappy bird traps in my day, but I've also
Mhm.
seen some really good ones. The really good ones kind of like just fall onto the bird. The bird trips a wire and just sort of falls on there. And
Well,
then it's a little bit more effective on the ground, you know.
leaning towards the mystical myself, I much prefer that it's like a devil's net. Like,
Yeah.
Right, right, right.
ooh,
Now, well, okay. So let's get into this. Now, the
yes,
interesting thing is we make the assumption that the crime itself happened on January 2nd or very in the very early hours of January 3rd,
okay.
1995, which is the same day as Russ's birthday. That's
His
correct, right?
His
daughter's
daughters.
birthday.
Russ's daughter's birthday.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing about that, I did some research. And Walter, you're really going to like this. January 2nd and 3rd is also known as the Feast of the Old. It's a tribute feast to the goddess Hecate.
Oh, was
See, thank you. I get so tired of the logic boys, I call them, the certainty fetish fellas. They're a generation younger than mine. Telling me, yeah, you see Hecate everywhere. Me, 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 me. It's like, well, because she is. But anyway.
if she is, she is. Nice find, Todd.
Yeah, thank you.
That is also, I forget my own books. If I'm not mistaken, January 3rd is the date given for the alleged death of Juan Cabrillo.
Oh, interesting. Now, as far as the to rewind a little, we need to establish
Sure.
Russ Cole and Marty Hart. Now, it's almost kind of like I hate to say this, but it's a similar style relationship in the beginning that to Lethal Weapon, Murtaugh, and Riggs, right? They
Good,
kind of don't
good
like
point.
each other and stuff like that. It kind of follows that formula. Um, but as that opening shot or the opening scene with Marty talking to the detectives, you could kind of tell like he does have that respect, even though he thinks that Rust is really creepy. he has that respect for Rust. You know, they call him the tax man, right? Because he has that big
Yeah.
leisure.
In in cop culture, you
Yeah,
find that uh, when you've been in that culture, it's like being in the military, and it's like being brothers. And we have another comment on the brother issue, I think
right.
all of us, where this show is concerned. But it's one of those things where you give each other shit incessantly,
Yeah.
but you respect each other's strengths and abilities. And it's one of those things where you can fight with your brothers, sisters, or whatever, but an outsider better not come in and
Mhm.
try to
Right.
interject, or you're turning on. It's like, no, no, no.
Yeah,
I get to thump on my brother. You don't. And
yeah.
it's kind of, you begin to see that with Marty, I think, in them. But yeah, you're right. We're introduced to the dynamic. But you know what? Let's go ahead and throw it out there. Dana, what do you think about the rumor which Woody Harrelson himself and Matthew McConaughey have fed themselves that these two guys are brothers in real life?
I think that they are.
I think so too.
I think that there's, they're probably stepbrothers, so I
Yeah.
don't know if it would be a different dad or a different mom.
It's the different dad. It's they allegedly share the same mom because uh how do they call him? Big Jim McConaughey. Him and Matthew's mom had an up and down kind of marriage there for a while. And it was supposedly on a break when they were separated that Woody's dad, the infamous Woody Harrelson's dad, who might have been involved with the JFK assassination, I believe that,
Right.
which is another weirdness. Here we have this show we're talking about.
He
What,
was represented by Sidney Powell.
tell us more about that.
Uh, during like I get Woody's dad murdered a judge,
Yeah.
Hmm.
and the lawyer he got was Sidney Powell, who is
Who is that?
associated with like the Trump administration and all that shenanigans that
Of
went
course.
down like 2020 and like the Kraken and all that funny stuff.
Oh, the Kraken. I remember. Oh, I forgot about that. The
Yeah, the
Kraken.
Kraken.
Good Lord.
Someone was smoking the Kraken.
So Dana, what are your thoughts and notes in the beginning of this
Oh,
episode?
I've got 7 pages of notes.
Oh.
Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and like bore you guys, but I
Jump in.
did I did do like I wanted to figure out because a lot of people haven't heard of Thomas Ligotti and the conspiracy against the human race. And
Hmm.
so I did a timestamp and we are introduced to Rust Cole's ontology of the world within the first 15 minutes of the show. That is when he's in the car with Marty and they're talking about you Christian, yeah? No, I'm a pessimist. And then he starts going into his whole diatribe about how human consciousness is essentially, uh, antithetical to the world in and of itself because it's not natural and that's not the way that it's supposed to be. And I think that the fact that Pizzolatto put that in within the first 15 minutes, people should go and read this book because I think it's going to help you understand because now that I've reread because I had only like scanned through The King in Yellow prior to this and I have not read The Conspiracy Against the Human Race in a long time. And so within the blending of these two with The King in Yellow, it's like this perfect harmony where these two stories complement each other, even though one is nonfiction and the
Mhm.
other is fiction. Because in Conspiracy Against the Human Race, Ligotti talks about how, there's no such thing as the divine right of kings to rule. The only right that we have, the only human right that we have innately is to die, and how human consciousness is essentially the only real supernatural horror because it's the thing that should not be but is. And it reminded me of like in the opening of The King in Yellow, where they're talking about Carcosa and the like the lethal building where like they government approved that you could
Right.
unalive yourself. And
Yes.
and so I just thought that it's really interesting, this sort of immediate preparation into what's going to come with this
Mhm.
group and the church and Carcosa and the King in Yellow.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned the building where they're allowed to walk into their own extinction, right? Um, I jokingly mentioned Star Trek a little while ago, and in the first season, there's an episode. I'm pretty sure it's the first season, but in the original series, there's an episode in which they go to this. I think it's a sky city. Anyway, they instead of physical war, they play kind of a simulation, and they go, "Oh, in the simulation, this city got wiped out." So they'll designate X number of people to walk into these booths where they're incinerated or disintegrated or
Right.
whatever. And of course, Kirk and them are like, "Are you nuts?" And they get them to stop it. But I think that the writers of that, I think clearly drew from Robert W. Chambers,
Right.
Yellow King.
Right. Um, the initial photography for this episode happened in Arkansas, and later um, they opted to start shooting in southern Louisiana for the tax break. Just a
Oh,
little technical doodad for you guys, food for thought.
little personal history. I'll just throw in there real quickly. Back in 2008, I had a production company that was going to make my Secret of the Amazon Queen novel into a movie, and we were talking about possible locations. And they brought up Louisiana. They said they think they're going to film a lot of the jungle stuff, whatever, in Louisiana. I'm like, Louisiana? And I'm like, yeah, because of the tax breaks. So it's that makes sense to me.
Hmm.
Anyway, um,
Yeah. Interesting. So we get to the crime scene and we see Dora Lang.
yeah,
And we see Marty Cole, blah, 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 Russ Cole, sort of analyzing everything with his huge book,
yeah.
sketching and everything like that. We see her with the crown of antlers. We see her
Mhm.
tied to the tree. It's very ritualistic. I want to just say, like, Louisiana has had its own history of occult ritual crime. Perhaps one of the most famous ones is Clementine Barnabette, the Voodoo Axe murders associated. It's like a small cult associated with this Church of Sacrifice stuff. Although there's been some dispute over how many people they actually had murdered, it's pretty clear that some of them were very much done by this. I guess you would call it a cult. Uh, all the way up to 2012. Another very prominent one with occult undertones, I guess you could say, is the murder of Jaron Lockhart. And so, if you guys are interested in occult ritual crime in that particular state, I would take go ahead and take a look at those two, Clementine Barnabette and the murder of Jaron Lockhart.
There's also a lot of vampires in Louisiana, like
Yeah,
actual like vampires
the
that
Carter family that happened
yeah,
in like the 1930s. Yeah,
there's still vampires there now. I still have
yeah.
family there, and obviously a lot of these things kind of go underreported, but I do have some contacts in LEO, and there are individuals that have been found that are drained of their blood,
Oh my
as
God.
well as animals, things of that sort.
Yeah.
Vampires actually a very popular culture. Obviously, we know that Voodon or Vodon, however you would like to pronounce it, along with Santeria, and then there's also this whole thing with like the casket girls, which is kind of lore, kind of not lore, but in regards to everything having to be above ground because of where Louisiana sits. Because a big sticking point throughout the show, what we see, at least in the first episode, and it's something that you notice that Rust is he's immediately playing these detectives in his head because they're talking about Hurricane Rita wiping out these records, and
Yeah.
he brings up the girls' school, and he's just like staring through that detective, and he's like, "You know anything about that?" And that detective's face, like you can tell that he wants to react and he doesn't. And it's a good tell.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah.
and let's throw in there how good those guys are playing the two detectives.
Hmm.
Both of them we've seen in other things, and
Right.
they do. they're supporting characters, but when you watch their performances and I mean, those characters are really
Mhm.
awesome. And I think it sets up well for how things go in the end,
Right.
you know.
Well, Russ Cole really does know how to play it perfectly when he gets them to go get beer because
Yes.
Yeah,
it won't be admissible in court. Is that right?
right.
Correct. Yep.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Nothing,
inadmissible due to intoxication.
nothing snooty. Yeah,
Lone Star, right?
we said it last time. I won't belabor the point this time, but that's his Captain Kirk. That's his greatest role.
Absolutely.
He could do great movies for the rest of his life and die at 100 years old, but Russ Cole,
Hmm.
and it is because um Pizzolatto, he really captured lightning in a bottle with all the themes and the
Yeah.
details like you guys are pointing out and we're all noticing.
Hmm.
He really did. It was almost like it was kismet, as they say, that for
Hmm.
him to write this thing.
Hmm.
And that's why it didn't surprise me to learn that it was inspired by, some real cases and stuff
Hmm.
because um it feels real even before you
Right,
learn
right.
that about the
Well,
Ponchatouli case.
right. And the thing that I like especially is how much contrast there is between Rust and Marty. Where
Yeah.
Rust is kind of this lonely guy. He's kind of broken inside, and he kind of hits the ground running, and he starts working that case because that it's all he has. Where Marty has his family life. He, although he's like sleeping on the couch or in the chair and stuff like that. He's kind of a little bit tortured inside and conflicted compared to the other detectives who seem like they really don't give a crap at all. They're
Well,
just
there's
like,
there's there's a lot of guys in the job, real world, that
yeah,
having the badge and being able to say they're either an agent or a detective is more interesting to them than the actual work. I mean, there's
right.
a turnover in that profession. You get guys that are all like, "Oh, I'm an agent." I'm saying agent because I was in that vernacular, and they get into the work and they realize, "Oh, I don't really like the work," and then they get out of it, as
Mhm.
opposed to us weirdos who are like, yeah, yeah, wait, no, I don't want to go into management. I want to stay doing the job.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
oh shoot, I forgot oh, you were talking about Rust and Marty.
Hmm.
They're a perfect example of the classic sun and the moon. Okay.
Hmm.
Rust is the tortured one, right?
Hmm.
Marty's the one that level has it together, but yet not. Rust is broken on the superficial level, but
Yeah.
spiritually, he has the integrity. He is true,
Right.
okay, with integrity. Whereas Marty, superficially, he has it together, but he's broken
Yeah.
spiritually. He's broken ethically because he's cheating on his wife all the time,
Correct.
being
Hmm.
a duplicitous
Right. Right.
asshole, and
And I mean, we
that's
we
the
don't know that in episode one. Like they kind of do little hints here and there, and then they introduce the I guess you call her the mistress
yeah.
very
Alexander
briefly.
Daddario shows
Yeah.
up, and you immediately are like,
Right.
yeah, let's go find a room where we can talk about these files. Wink,
Right.
wink. And then
Yeah.
Rust clearly sees what's going on, I think, in
Yeah.
that. Jumping back into something in the episode, see how much time we got here. Okay. Oh, yeah, we still got a few minutes in this one before we jump to the other link. When they go to okay, earlier they go to Rust's apartment. Remember when
Yeah.
Marty's saying, I went to his apartment. I kind of felt for the guy because there's nothing there. And he's got the cross, the crucifix on the wall, right?
Right.
And then this theme recurs with Rust because they go to that church,
Hmm.
right? After they go visit the guy who was the pitcher, the Fontenot girl's uncle.
Hmm.
And they find that church, and the pastor there talks about the cats. Well, when
Hmm.
Russ goes in there, you see the smaller cross up on the pulpit, and the way it's shot, in the frame is also the large cross up on the wall.
Hmm.
of the church, and they're virtually identical, but one looks like, a big shadow of the other cast,
Hmm.
or something haunting the little one.
Right.
And,
Hmm.
Yeah.
then we see, um, actually, I think I'm getting it backwards. When they go visit the Fontenot girl's uncle, there's the shot of Rust, and right over his shoulder is another cross, another
Hmm.
crucifix. And
Right.
it's interesting. I find there's multiple layers there. A crucifix is a torture device, so that, he's a tortured
Right.
soul, but
Right.
it's also other things. What do you think, Dana?
I think that it also, even though I understand his like ontology, the way that he views the world, I think that ethically speaking, because of the
Mhm.
things that he has been through, that he actually does have a higher moral standard and a
Hmm.
higher ethical standard. And so, while he says that he's, essentially bearing witness and contemplating, allowing your own crucifixion and, being in the garden, it's like, I think that he does actually maybe align with, what some would perceive as, good beliefs. I'm using a
Hmm.
blanket term, don't at me, but like
Well,
versus, Marty, who's very
yeah.
like, I'm a Christian. Like
Right.
everybody around here
Yeah.
has a religious belief. You're the weirdo, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Marty is sort of a go along to get along. It's very
Yes.
superficial. I kind of view Rust throughout this whole season. He's on a spiritual journey.
Yeah.
He starts off broken and as a sort of an atheist because you can be good and be an atheist. Okay, so essentially, I view Russ Cole as being on a spiritual journey throughout this whole season. He starts off as, although morally good, essentially an atheist. And then by the end of this, you know, of the season, spoiler, it's very old, so you've probably seen it by now. He's looking up at the stars, and he's in the wheelchair, and he's talking to Marty, and like he talks about how he saw things when he was out, and he wanted to die and go to God and stuff like that. He wanted to be with his daughter, like. And like that, I think that was sort of the confirmation that the character needed.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree. And
to you know,
I think that that's why the conspiracy against the human race, that whole worldview, and also the King in Yellow, it's so important. And I think that that's what Pizzolatto is trying to drive home by introducing that monologue, where, for some people, like they can relate, and other people, it is very off putting, as it was to Marty when they're having that conversation. But it's like, so this one quote, because I just thought that it was like the perfect thing from the Yellow King, or the King in Yellow, is there's a painless death that awaits him who can no longer bear the sorrows of this life. If death is welcome, let him seek it there. It's like there's this constant sort of battling with suffering, right? And I feel like Rust is constantly suffering and is still able to push through and power through. And then we have Marty, who acts like he's suffering all the time, but he's actually just kind of skating by on a lot of stuff, and he's
yeah,
mostly partying and having a good time. And
right,
so those are two major
right.
contrasts.
Where Rust is legitimately responsible,
Hmm.
as sort of Maggie says, he's a responsible man. Uh, Marty is like just going along to get along, just playing the part, but like at heart, he's like a tomcat, essentially. He's a kind of failure to launch adult child.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, you know.
Um, I want to throw in there because this crossed my mind in the scene where they're leaving the coroner's office, and he
Hmm.
gives the wonderful, "This place is like a memory of a place fading," or whatever. Um, it crossed my mind seeing this so many times. We love Russ Cole. We
Hmm.
think, wow, that'd be great to know that guy. In real life, you have to remember that it's great watching it on screen, but in real life, it would be difficult to know someone like that and work with them
Yeah.
day in and
Most
day out,
definitely.
you
He
know?
would be he would probably make fun of me pretty bad.
It,
Pretty bad.
and but I think what that does is knowing that it helps you understand the depth to which this guy really is in his own agony. But Marty, his character deserves a lot of credit for um, even with all the aggravations, he still sees the virtue and the
Yes.
Yeah.
value
Yeah, he
of.
covers for the guy, and I mean, yeah, he's the one when none of the other detectives would stick up for him, he did. He vouched
Yeah,
for him. Yeah.
because as a detective, because Marty himself isn't necessarily a bad detective, his gut knows this guy, he's irritating as hell, but he's a genius and he really knows what he's doing. And I'm going to throw out my last note here because I want Dana to be able to get to all of hers.
Right.
Um, uh, we have a hint later in the episode. Um, of the corruption that's everywhere. The Yellow King is everywhere. And I do want to throw out there too, what you just read, that was from Chambers' book, right?
Yes.
Think about how what actually Chambers doesn't he gets recognized for the King in Yellow, but you don't hear a lot of people talking about his way with words. And I just love that. That's this guy talk. You know what's weird is
Hmm.
um we talked about Nick Pizzolatto having lightning in a bottle with True Detective season one.
Yeah.
Chambers had lightning in a bottle with the King in Yellow.
Oh,
So
it
Oh,
takes
most
your breath away
definitely.
reading it.
Yeah.
It makes
yeah,
you emotional. It's
yeah.
like it's poetry.
But to further emphasize that the corruption is everywhere, um, I think it might be in this that I noticed this the scene in which Tuttle comes to visit the police office after he walks out. I noticed it for the first time watching this series umpteen times after so many years. I noticed look at that scene and those scenes, the pillars, the metal beams that are the pillars holding up the ceiling in
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
they're yellow.
Oh shit, are
Oh,
they really?
They're yellow and white. They're like halfway up yellow, halfway up white. And I didn't notice it until this time
Huh.
when Tuttle's leaving and Tuttle's in there, his cousin's the governor, so powerful insiders are in league with the King in Yellow, and there's all these pillars right there in the police house,
was
yellow. That's no
Harold
accident.
who was the police officers with Tuttle?
Oh,
Who
that's Speece. He's the
Speaks.
commander, the Louisiana State
Right.
Police commander,
Right. I just kind of it slipped my brain for a
and
second.
a big asshole. And notice that the piping, as they call it, on the uniform is yellow.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Speed,
Interesting.
he's an odd duck. And also Tuttle does like that sort of like Masonic hand signal the entire time that he's standing there like talking. Yes, like literally the entire time. And also
Dude.
I feel like the dynamic with Rust and Marty is that Rust gets to say all the things that Marty wishes that he could say to some of these people sometimes,
Right.
like the
Yeah.
little smirks and like faces that he makes where he's cracking up. And I do think that he also looks out for him, like with the other detectives as well.
Yeah.
That it's, what is it? What is it? The hens coming to pluck your eyes out. You better
Yeah.
watch your mouth. He's putting him in check and also being like, hey guys, like he's not from around here. Like the guy
Yeah.
doesn't even have a TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's from Texas.
Yeah.
They're different down there. One little thing that is just a short comment on our times is that Tuttle's there. Tuttle's part of this ick, all this corruption, evil stuff going on. And that's when Speece informs them they're going to be putting together a task force for
Yeah.
anti-Christian crimes. And you can
Yeah.
see Russ' reaction is, you got to be fucking kidding. Really? What about
Yeah.
just any occult crimes or any anti-religious crimes, no
Right.
matter what, really,
Yeah.
it's got to be that anti-Christian thing.
Yep.
And boy, that just feels like it resonates with the times we're in,
Right. Right.
the
Well, it's
those victims.
especially coming from like an authority like the church, right? With which
Yeah.
Tuttle, um psychopaths seem to gravitate to positions of authority, and I think like
Narcissists.
yeah, and I think like pastors, ministers, priests, and whatnot is it's really up there. If it's not number one, it's either number two or number three.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to shut up more and slide back because I'm really intrigued with the multiple pages of notes that I want Dana to
Yeah, I
get
want
to.
I
What
want to
about
hear
you,
Dana's
Todd?
notes.
Yeah,
Well, I
so
don't, well, I mean, I took like chunks and I'm not going to sit here and like read excerpts from books. I just didn't know how deep we were going to go. So don't
Okay.
hype it up too much. But so
Oh.
you brought up when they're leaving the coroner's building. And so the first rewatch that I did a couple of weeks ago, where I was like, all right, I'm just going to sit here and I'm just going to take notes, no purpose, just on things that I notice. And this is the thing that has stuck out the most. And I'm not going to say whether there's continuity of this theme in any of the following episodes. But when in that first episode, so the first thing I noticed when they initially go into the coroner's office and they pull out Dora Lang and then they're sitting there talking to him and they ask about the devil nets, he says that the symbols were painted with blue acrylic paint with a gloved finger, right? So there's no fingerprints. So there's the first mention of blue. Then I notice as they're walking out of the coroner's building is blue. Then,
Mhm.
when you look at the detectives that are interviewing Rust and Marty, only
Yeah.
when they're interviewing Rust, not Marty, the younger detective is wearing all blue. And
Oh,
then
interesting.
when Rust goes to Marty's house and he's drunk, and Marty brings him a cup of coffee outside while he makes the call before he brings him in, he gives him a blue coffee mug. There is a really weird thing with the color blue in this episode, and I just thought it was odd. And obviously, this is like this area of research Todd is much more well versed on, but I did try to find what I could in regards to the use of blue, if there was any sort of significance, especially within, religious or occult research. And from everything that I could find, there's the element of I think with the Christian angle, right, is like especially like the anti-Christian task force, which hey, yeah, Pam Bondi had one like 6 months ago that she was supposed to set up. So yeah, that's something that's literally happening now. But it's obviously associated with heaven, right? So that
Hmm.
makes sense. But specifically, it's the throat chakra, which governs one's ability to speak authentic truth. I think that that's kind of fucking weird.
yeah.
It's also the color of your third eye, which again, I also think is a little bit weird. And then the most interesting thing that I found, two interesting things, is it said that red is the magician's robe and blue is the high priestess. Together, the divine masculine and feminine forces combine into the purple cloth of the cosmic world dancer, but specifically also within witchcraft, blue is the color of the third eye and is associated with psychic power. I just think that there's something there specifically with
Hmm.
blue, and because it's rust, it's more than
Right.
Marty, it's focused on rust, and I think
Hmm.
it's the hint of what's to come. Of Rust is on this spiritual journey,
Yeah.
he is being led by something stronger than just his intuition, that there is a whole other element that he is aware of that Marty's not quite yet.
Right. Right.
What would you describe as the color of dried blood?
Rust.
Touche.
Thank you.
Okay.
And he's the tortured figure contemplating crucifixion, the tortured figure of the cross, the blood of rest, the blood of
Hmm.
Christ.
Right.
Yeah,
I
good point.
so but I love this about the blue as you were saying that. I'm like, oh shoot, yeah, that's right.
It was just so
Um,
weird to me because it seems so specific because the coroner is the one that points out, like, I don't know what the symbols are. Maybe you guys should consult with an anthropologist, right? And so it's like there is an element of this sort of magic that's going on, this ritual, obviously, that's going on within the crime, but it's like everything else is so purposeful. And so I'm like, there's got to be something here with the blue. And then they walk out of the building, and I'm like, all right, well, the building is blue. There's something off with blue. And like I said, I'm not going to go into the other episodes, but it's just food for thought.
Hmm.
well, we're talking about Spies, and when you see the other officers in their dress uniform, it's got the gold piping, but they are blue uniforms. Now,
Right.
yes, a lot of police departments wear
Right.
blue, but actually, just as many of them, it's like a black, or the tan and green kind of thing. So,
Right.
um, but there you have the blue and the gold together. And hello, you mentioned the Masonic symbol, the Blue Lodge Freemasonry, blue and gold. When you become a third degree Master Mason, blue and gold is the color combination with a lot of the stuff that has to do with that. So, yeah, there's that Freemasonry
It's
That
just
symbol.
so obvious when he's doing it because he's like the biggest dude standing in that half circle, and it's like his hands are so gigantic. It reminds me of that movie Shallow Hal when what's his name, Jack Black, gets stuck in the elevator with Tim Robbins and he's
Yeah,
calling him banana hands. Like that's how Tuttle looks, is like
yeah.
banana hands. And it's just like I feel like they want you to notice it. Like you have to notice it
right.
before that scene ends.
Right.
You know,
And like he kind of looks like a pervert from like the first time you see him,
Yeah.
you know.
well, what I was going to say is, that actor's been around for years, and we all recognized him when we first saw True Detective. But since he's done True Detective, anytime I see him, it's like, oh, it's Tuttle,
Yeah.
Yeah.
creepy, creepy Tuttle. It- how much more of Chambers did you catch this viewing, at least in the first episode, Dana?
Well, I mean, like I said, I tried to really limit myself just because I didn't really want to go too far on that. I think that, because we're not getting into Dorling's diary just yet, and so I didn't want to dive into that. I just thought that
Mhm.
this idea of morality and death and this purposeful placement of, okay, this is one half of the show is this completely different worldview where it's the noble thing to do to end as a species altogether. I just thought that that whole concept with what Chambers wrote, like that line specifically, it seems like it's perfectly preparing you for what's coming when they
Yeah.
go looking for Dora in the next episode.
Right. Well, and the interesting thing is like in the process of beginning the investigation into the killer, or the killing of Dora Lang and who Dora Lang is, they come across the Fontenot girl, right? Who is the Fontenot girl?
That's right.
Right.
Yes,
And like one thing sort of leads to another. I thought that was really interesting.
I agree. I
Is it
agree
like that
completely.
in actual police work, Walter?
Ask that again. Is it like what?
Like, in the process in episode one,
Yeah.
they start kind of like deconstructing
Yeah.
Dora Lang's life. Who is
Oh
Dora
yeah.
Lang,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
And but in the process of doing that, they find out about the Fontenot girl,
Sure.
which leads them over here, right?
Yep.
Does that how often does that happen in police work?
Well, you have to understand, in a lot of the context of when you're an investigator at the detective level, like in police departments, you're detective, and federal agents, you start out, you're supposed to be, detective level. And but you don't always get the amount of time that we see investigators in TV and movies getting to work on a case. What I like about True Detective
Hmm.
is you see the boss saying, "Are you guys wrapping this up? You're almost done. We want this closed." You get that in the real world. So um, a lot of times there's not enough time for those kind of details to emerge.
Hmm.
For
Yeah.
instance, yeah, I was a federal agent for 6 years. I spent a lot of my time on counter-espionage operations, double agent operations, and chasing spies and terrorists and operational things. Certainly as much as investigating, because finding a real spy is like the Holy Grail. But as far as in-depth really getting into the weeds, spending time on an investigation. My Empire of the Wheel thing has been technically the biggest case I ever worked, and I worked that exactly as I do as an investigator, which I still am. Um, and so in that context, in that sense, you do get the time for one thing to lead to another. Now,
Right.
that happened in spades on Empire of the Wheel for me. Because remember, I started pulling threads on this, and I was working on it over a year before, honestly, I ever thought of writing a book about it.
Hmm.
It was a personal obsession. It was weirdness on steroids. There was a lot of synchronicity, a lot of weird phenomena, light level going on in that first um, really year and a half for me. And the only reason I decided to write a book was because I was supposed to go off for a year to Afghanistan and be a counterterrorism analyst at a FOB, at a forward operating base. And that job didn't happen under very weird circumstances. So much so that I came away from it thinking, maybe there's a reason I wasn't supposed to get this job. And then it was, and there's another weird story about that. I'll tell you guys another time. But there was an incident that happened that made me firmly believe, oh, I would have been there and I would have died.
Right, right.
I'm supposed
No,
to be here. And that's when I started going, well, maybe I'm supposed to write about this. But
right.
sorry, I veered off into the weeds. But
That's
a long
okay.
a long way to answer your question. It can be very intense. One
Mhm.
thing will lead to another if you're doing your job. That's probably how I
Right,
should have answered your question in the first place.
right.
I
Well,
go
and I
on.
think too with like Marie Fontenot, because I think it's that old man, that crotchety old man that's standing outside, kind of like chewing gum, right? And he's like, "Oh, like, is this the Fontenot girl? You know, family used to have a house down the way." And he's very suspicious of the police. You can tell, like, he's very apprehensive to talk to Marty and Russ. I think that and I'm pretty sure that this happens right before this, where Rust sees the ghost of his daughter, and then he asks Marty if he believes in ghosts, and Marty's like, "What did we say about the car being a silent place of reflection?" And it's like, I think that the ghost of Rust's daughter is A, showing that that is what he is haunted by, and also I think that that is giving the premise of Marie Fontenot and the fact that she is essentially not like a ghost. I'm not saying like, malevolent spirit hanging around this, but it's like that is where it is leading, because ultimately once they start looking into Marie Fontenot, that is when we are introduced to the family that is inarguably like the royal bloodline or royal genealogy of the whole thing, which is Childress, right?
Right. Now, it's interesting that you bring up royalty and bloodlines and everything like that. I just direct people's attention back to the crown that Dora Lang was wearing, the antler crown. Now
Mhm.
that's interesting because that could be symbolic of the demon Furfur, who in demonology is a powerful earl in hell, or the Aguncan tribe, which I highly doubt has anything to do this far down south, because considering you know that's way north in Canada.
Not so fast.
That's a fact. Walter's going to correct me. Here we go.
When you bring in the the Acadian diaspora,
Yeah,
the Acadians were, remember, they were run out of Canada by the British Crown,
right,
the British running Canada.
right.
And where did they end up? In
Yeah.
Louisiana.
Oh, so that's really interesting because as we know, although I'm not sure of any cannibalism actually taking place, uh the typical depiction of the Wendigo is a small or a tall, gaunt demon with deer antlers. So that's also kind of another, reference to the deer antlers right there. Um, it's very pagan, I think. Don't you think, Walter and Dana?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, I don't want to. I'm really trying not to go into episode two. I will point
Right.
out a similarity in
I'm trying
episode two.
I'm trying I'm not I'm trying not to either. Hey guys, talk amongst yourselves for a second. I gotta use the restroom real quick.
Okay.
Alrighty.
My medicine's kicking in.
Well, that's
I
good,
know
I
that
guess. At
feeling.
least you're getting your money's worth. Um, So something else that I thought was, and I mean, whatever, this is just this. So this was my first pass. So
Okay.
when they go and get the sketch of the green-eared spaghetti monster, right,
Yeah.
from Fontenot, I mean, I just think it's weird that the sheriff, that his name was Sheriff Tate, because it's like Lieutenant Colonel Paul Tate. Like, I don't really know. I don't know. I feel like everything that Pizzolatto does is purposeful. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, is he doing something weird with fucking Manson? I have no idea. Could be nothing. But again, this is where we first are introduced to the name Ted Childress, because that's who was the sheriff when Fontenot went missing,
Yeah.
right? And so that's actually
Yeah.
like the first mention. And then I think specifically because if it was me and I was watching this show, it's worth people remembering or considering that. So they mentioned Hurricane Rita destroying these files, right?
Hmm.
And Hurricane Rita was a
Oh,
month after Katrina, right? So
Okay.
like Blackwater was still there. The mercenary teams for
Hmm.
Blackwater were still there. The task force from California, the two 185 armor and I-184 infantry were still there on the ground. Um, so there was like a lot of fuck shit going on, excuse my language, in Louisiana because of these hurricanes.
Yeah.
So I think
yeah.
that they're also nodding to that element of these storms, giving that cover
Hmm.
of allowing a lot of this criminality to go on, where we're
Yeah.
seeing it reflected in our old timeline, the original timeline of the original crime, right? Flowing through what we see with Tuttle Ministries and all of these
Right.
records getting destroyed, all the way through the entire series. I just think
Right.
it's worth people considering.
Do you
Yeah.
see in the name Marie Fontenot any kind of symbolism? Because what I see is Mary the fountain.
Laveau,
Pardon?
Laveau.
Hello.
Well, I don't know the like enunciation wise, that's what rolls through my head.
The what? I
Mary Font, like
Fontenot.
fountain.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
Oh, okay, yeah. Fontenot. D
right.
does Fontenot, is that a plural? I'm forgetting my French. Is that a plural? Is it like of the fountain? What
I
I
don't
wonder
know.
what the interpretation of Fontenot is.
I don't know. That's a good question.
Because when you were talking about the blue, and of course you mentioned the Empress tarot card, and she wears blue. By the way, that's Hecate also. Um,
Interesting.
um, and the color Mary is often Mary Magdalene is often associated with blue, wearing a blue robe. And of course, she's associated with the history of France. And Louisiana is, you know, the most French influenced, impacted place remaining, I think, in US history, unless I'm forgetting something.
Nope. They
Um,
still are.
so, so is little Marie Fontenot supposed to be, um, a nod? And then it makes me want to go and analyze all the names, right?
I know.
Um, Dora Lang and which, every time I hear that name, I think of the actor playing Charlie,
Me
in
too.
prison, right?
And I see his face.
Dory, what do you mean she's dead? And then later in that other episode, Reginald the Duke, he goes off.
I see
That
his face too. I can't help
right?
it. It's
That guy
immediate.
deserved an Emmy big time,
I
you know.
agree.
Um, and then we even had, well, we'll get into this in a later episode. There's other occultic references and symbols and stuff in other characters. But I found the first episode, again, folks, we're talking about a perfectly made, written, performed series, here. A perfect storyline, just execution, I guess I'm trying to say. But the first episode really does set up. Do you think it sets up everything, Dana?
Yes. I do. I
I
think
do
it sets up
too.
everything. I think that you immediately, with the crime itself, you immediately see that something is clearly very wrong,
Yeah.
that there is some type of occult nature to this crime. And you immediately are learning of Rust and Marty's dynamics and their perspectives on the world, both through, especially with Marty's interview with the two detectives. Like,
Yeah.
because obviously like he's wiser when he's being interviewed, right? And so he has the blessing of hindsight, but you kind of get him as more of like, laid back, but like, he's pretty old school in a lot of ways. He's got a good sense of humor. And with Rust, you're really learning about Rust, and you can sense his sort of distrust of the establishment. You're meeting Tuttle, right? You're meeting Speece. You're seeing how this department works, how it's like Rust is on the outside. These are things that are going to become pivotal throughout the entire series.
Yeah.
And again, with Fontenot, it's with Rust's daughter and him seeing her ghost, and then Marie Fontenot's name being brought up, and then that eventually leading them to where they need to go in order to find, who Dorling is and do this
Right.
investigation. It's like you're getting everything, and even though you don't know it, you are sort of seeing one of the main pivotal figures to this like skeleton key of this whole thing, which is Childress.
Right. By the way, Fontenot means small fountain or small spring.
There you
Oh,
go.
springs. That's yeah, that's very what's the word I'm looking for? Esoteric,
Yeah.
esoterically, you know, significant as a symbol. Springs have to do with telluric currents and the formation of
Mhm.
certain things, as our friend Sechery in his book The Handprint of Atlas goes to in
Right.
depth.
I
Um,
think of the Fountain of Youth.
that too, there you
Yeah.
go. And that part of the country is very much at the heart of the Fountain of Youth legends,
Right,
in
right.
the Americas, Florida being, the primary place
Hmm. Yeah.
associated with Ponce de
Now,
Leon.
it's interesting, and I think we need to note, just remind people that Louisiana, where the show takes place,
Hmm.
it's a very different kind of state
Yeah.
compared to the other states.
Oh,
Walter,
yes.
would you mind giving kind of a history, a brief history of like Louisiana and Napoleon, the Louisiana
Oh,
Purchase, just so people know?
yeah, Louisiana, clearly a French colonial property, and the French, the whole French stayed there very strongly through the whole state, primarily through New Orleans, which was, the port city,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Um, and it was really the gateway to the Louisiana Territory, which,
Hmm.
from what I've researched, um, there's a lot of mystery and weirdness there. Uh, there's a guy named, make sure I'm pronouncing his name right, Xavier Hayes, and I forget the other author's name. I apologize. They wrote the book, the murder of Meriwether Lewis, and
Hmm.
I talk about that in my books. But that's where um, a secret French mission, um, commissioned by Napoleon to his naval secretary, uh, was sent to do a quick exploration of Louisiana territory. I say quick because it took place in the period of a year or less. So that tells me they were looking for something specific. And and of course, Louisiana is where we get Cajuns from the Acadians who came from Northeast Canada. And when the British forced them out, um, they came down the Atlantic seaboard, and many of them ended up in Louisiana. Um,
Hmm.
and that's where Cajuns come from, because they
Right.
settled there and mixed with the locals, of course. So you end up
Hmm.
with the mixed Creoles
Right.
and
Hmm.
such and so
Yeah.
forth. But it remained a place of occult practice and the presence of
Right.
um, those kinds of things.
Right. And to note, Louisiana, well, as far as corruption goes, Louisiana was the first state to actually have a Sicilian crime family.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know the Sicilian mafia.
Yeah.
I do want to throw in there that it's interesting that we don't have some type of Napoleonic Napoleonic era or whatever reference in
Hmm.
True Detective season one,
Hmm.
or don't we? I mean,
Right.
maybe in fact, I'm glad you asked that because now I'm going to watch the rest of the episodes and wonder, oh, I wonder if I overlooked that.
Yeah. Yeah. Another occult, sort of a, I guess you could call it a crime with occult undertones, would
Hmm.
be the Axeman of New Orleans case that happened from the summer of 1918 to the fall, late fall of 1919. And that's a folks, that's a real doozy too. If you haven't heard of that one, take a look at that particular crime. That kind of has occult themes and the mafia and a bunch of different things sort of interweaving together with callbacks to the Clementine Barnabette voodoo axe murder stuff. It's very interesting indeed. And Dana, weren't you telling me that Louisiana doesn't have any federal jurisdiction?
So they do have federal jurisdiction,
Oh,
but
okay.
Louisiana is the only state that still operates under Napoleonic law.
Yes.
People like to argue with me and say that that is not applicable to the criminal code, that the criminal code does fall back onto common law, but that is not true.
Right.
There are rules of evidence and certain processes within the court that do allow for you to essentially be at the mercy of your judge, where they can, they can make a new precedent for you. And so I do, argue that that is a reason why there are so many, especially right now today, issues going on with corruption in Louisiana as a whole, just because there are ways to get around these things. And the Marcello family is still very powerful in New
Yeah.
Orleans. They still run everything there. And I think that these are valid things for people to consider. And even, not necessarily a cult, but for people who are interested in horror, if I'm remembering correctly, Anne Rice was born in New Orleans,
Hmm.
and Lewis from Interview with the Vampire was inspired by Count Saint Germain,
Right.
and there's the whole lore of Count Saint Germain
Jermaine.
living in New Orleans.
Right.
And,
Hmm.
did he push a lady out of a window? Did he not? I don't know. Allegedly, the cops find these wine bottles, and
Yeah.
it's not wine, it's human blood.
Right.
It's, there's a lot of I would say lore, but also I have personally interacted with vampires in the
Hmm.
quarter quite a few years back. So they are there and they do exist. It's the same as any other sort of practice. That's what they believe.
Hmm.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, I just an observation about Rust again. Been watching the show how many years, how many times, and oh, gee, as we're talking, all this talk about New Orleans and the history and stuff, it dawned on me. And this is what I love about talking about this with you guys and with anyone is the new things. And that's the beauty of True Detective season one in general is no
Hmm.
matter how many times you see it, there's little nuances that you go, oh, oh. And this is the reference that Russ' character has to Sherlock Holmes.
Hmm.
Can you guess what that is? Other than being a brilliant detective who's weird.
What is it?
When he goes to the bar to talk to the truck stop dollies, prostitutes,
Lot
and he's
lizards.
yeah, the lot lizards, and he's asking her for the drugs. Rust has a drug addiction like
Hmm.
Sherlock Holmes does in use or whatever with the what is it, the 7% solution of cocaine and
Yeah.
something. Yeah, so there it is. There's a Holmes reference for what that's worth.
Yeah, that's interesting. He's kind of an insomniac. He just kind of keeps going, right? He needs
Yeah,
it to sleep. So he says.
yeah,
Yeah, so he says. Well, and I think too, like, So when they're talking, we'll just call him the cat minister because there's two things that I want to say before I forget. I'll come back to the cat minister.
Do it.
So the Lake Charles murder, because they show the photo of the Lake Charles murder where she's on, it's the bridge, right?
Right.
And she's
Hmm.
hung up like this.
It's
I think it's interesting the difference in her, the way that she's staged, because that
yeah,
also aligns with a lot of the crucifixion
right.
symbolism that we see. And I think that I don't know if it's almost like a nod to Rust in a way, you know what I'm saying? Where they're
Hmm.
bringing that element in as far as the way that her body is posed. Obviously, I don't really know how the hell you would pose somebody like that on a bridge, you know, over that body of water. And then I think as well with the cat priest, where he's talking about the devil nuts and his grandmother, and he's like, oh, you know, she loved her some Jesus, but you know, she had a little bit of that Santeria in her. Um, I also just think that it's interesting to consider in the grand scheme of things without going into other episodes what we see, which is this enmeshing of what some would call, you know, Judeo-Christian or Protestantism. And when these people from, you know, specifically Haiti, the Caribbean, and Africa, when they're brought over to be slaves on these plantations, they brought over a lot of these religious practices, right? Whether it's voodoo, Santeria, whatever the case may be. And while they were, you know, the slave owners, the plantation owners were quote unquote forced to Christianize their slaves before they were allowed to come work. It ended up being a thing where a lot of the slaves would be able to buy their freedom by teaching these rich, wealthy white men how to do black magic, essentially. And so I think that that's also just an interesting element in regards to us seeing Tuttle and like the powerhouse that Tuttle is in the show. And it's
Yeah.
like, we know that this is old blood. This is the old boys club. Like he's that genealogy to
Yeah.
that whole case. I think it's just interesting to consider.
You know, the British during the colonial era were also involved with the bringing of African black magic to the Americas. When you dig into the history, you realize what a role the British played in, you know, the foundation of voodoo in the Americas, because just what you described, it was, you know, the British aristocratic types that were learning that from the Africans, you know, during their explorations of Africa and such.
It's a
And
hell of a way to buy your freedom, right? Like, yeah, I'll
yeah,
teach you rich old white man how to do this stuff, you know, and
sure,
it's
yeah,
yeah, you know, and it's like, hey, you know, it's I know people who are into that stuff and they've told me really crazy things, but you know, it does require a lot of animal sacrifice and sometimes human sacrifice. So it is a legitimate thing. Something else, because you guys bring up a lot more because you guys are more familiar with it. You know, HP Lovecraft, the element of, you know, him in this series.
yes,
And it's just something that I found interesting. It was just this random excerpt from a letter that he had written to Clark
mhm,
Ashton Smith,
uh,
June 11th, 1932,
yeah,
where he's talking about, and I passed with him through the Egyptian gates and beyond the pylons into the alley of cypresses, and he showed me the dwelling place of the rich in the city of eternal sleep, the ponderous tombs of cavern marble, the white angels that mourned in stone, the pale symbols of the urns, and the names inscribed upon tablets of granite and letters of gold. But I said to him, these things interest me not. These tombs are but traditions of the wealth once owned by the men who dwell now where riches avail nothing, and all rest together in the dust. It's so like it's such a beautiful poetic way to describe like the ritual of the death process in Louisiana, especially in New Orleans and in some of these parishes, because of where they are at on sea level, where everything has to be above ground.
yeah,
I just also think that that is something that it's like there is that Lovecraft element that I see just in that letter where he's writing to somebody talking about it. And it's like,
mhm,
it's always there, the sort of, whether it's esoteric, occultic, this acknowledgement of this constant like looming death.
yes, yeah. It it it, it goes back to source from which Chambers drew Carcosa, and that is Ambrose Bierce, his story, an inhabitant of Carcosa. And in that story, the narrator, essentially, you figure out that he's died and he's awakened from his sleep in essentially the other side, the land of the dead. And so Carcosa is this place that can be reached once you have died. So the death and the land of the dead symbolism starts from the original source, Bierce, then to Chambers, who then, wow, I mean, he's inspired by that one story, and look what he created, you know, with The King in Yellow, which
Yeah,
has
isn't that
inspired so many
amazing?
other writers.
Yeah.
Here's one thing that I've written a book about Ambrose Bierce. I've delved into this weirdness and True Detective and blah 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 and all this stuff. I don't know what Bierce thought of The King in Yellow. I don't recall reading anything about that because Chambers wrote that in the 1890s, right?
Yeah.
91 or something. It predates Dracula. It predates Bram Stoker's Dracula. And Bierce didn't disappear till 1913. So, and he spent time in England and stuff.
Mhm.
I've never read what Bierce thought of Chambers' work. Clearly,
Mhm.
nodding to his own. And
Right.
it would be really interesting I'm going to be digging into that when we're done with this, because now I want
Yeah.
to know if he ever commented. Because Bierce reviewed a poetry by the young Clark Ashton Smith, and Smith was supposed to meet Bierce.
Oh.
Um, but Bierce, there was supposed to be a meeting, and it didn't happen. And then Bierce went back east, and then he went into Mexico and disappeared. So Smith has a connection to Bierce, and of course, the famous connection to Lovecraft. Um, anyway, for what that's worth.
No, I think that's fascinating because Todd had sent me the Ambrose Bierce, like somebody did just like a quick audio reading, and I was able to speed it up a little bit to like 1.5. And I ended up listening to it. It was before the last episode that we did on this. I listened to it like 5 times after I listened to it the first time because I was like, this is so good. I was like,
Yeah.
I feel like, and you explaining it, I'm like, okay, so I'm not crazy. Like he's dead. He's coming to terms with the fact that he is dead and he's in Carcosa. Like it was so confusing to me initially. And then I'm like, oh, okay, this makes sense. Now the King in Yellow completely makes sense. Like I didn't know that it had originated going that far back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always thought that like the short story by Clark Ashton Smith, Planet of the Dead, was like about Carcosa, but I'm not so sure anymore. You know, um, but I love both stories regardless.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Planet of the Dead is amazing.
yeah,
Um, And it's through Smith that I think, because I talk about this in Empire the With Three, the nameless ones. I suggest that Smith is one of the sources that Lovecraft might have learned about what happened in San Bernardino in 1915. But I'm not going to go into details here because that's part of my presentation at Contact in the Desert this year. So,
oh,
anyway, Clark Ashton Smith, I think he died in the 1960s, right?
yeah.
Um,
Last of the
Interesting.
Romantics.
Yeah, the last of that, the famous three correspondents, Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, and
Yeah,
Clark Ashton Smith. Robert
yeah.
E. Howard, depending on the source you read, he died within a few hours or whatever before my dad was born. I
Right.
always found that to be an interesting
And
synchronicity.
interestingly enough, Lovecraft doesn't get enough credit. Um, but it was Lovecraft that suggested to Robert Lee Howard that to write a werewolf story from the perspective of the werewolf.
Oh,
Interesting.
Yeah. And so like all of our werewolves, the Wolfman, American Werewolf in London, all those stories, they wouldn't have happened without H.P. Lovecraft and Robert Howard, you know.
That's
Okay.
interesting.
Yeah,
They were, Chambers and King in Yellow had such a huge impact on a
right.
bunch of 20th century,
And
not just
it,
Lovecraft or Bram Stoker and
yeah,
Lovecraft, but also
right,
the era of Bradbury and right up to Stephen King in
right,
his, to me, I know, to me, the early part of Stephen King's career is his most brilliant. That's what,
right.
I think that's what he'll be remembered for 100 years from now is the early stuff.
Yeah,
But
most definitely. Most definitely. And the interesting thing I always thought about like the King in Yellow and
mhm.
Chambers is like the play. What does it exactly does the play represent? Is the play like in the context of True Detective, is the play the case? Like the case,
Yes,
the obsession with the case drive you mad?
within the play, a genealogy is revealed, and the genealogy is the you know,
Yeah,
who did who, and who was
right,
begat of who. Well, a genealogy in a case is where does the case lead? Who were the perpetrators? Who was
right.
involved? It leads to the ultimate perpetrator, which is the Yellow King. And
Yeah.
so, and yeah, the madness of uh, the 7 years I spent on the Empire of the Wheel investigation, which resulted in the three books, but I jumped to a different kind of book because I had to get my head out of that space.
Yeah.
7 years of intensified synchronicity just revealing itself every day. I couldn't
Yeah.
stop seeing them.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
7 years. I mean, I was followed from my home. I was brought before a wandering bishop, kind of a Tuttle figure, and it was
Hmm.
made clear to me that I was being watched. I mean, they said as much and they demonstrated. Okay, the
Hmm.
day I had lunch with this go-between and this Episcopi Vagans, this wandering bishop guy, it was after the little discussion in which they revealed to me that all my activities had been watched in this investigation. He said, "Let's go to
Hmm.
lunch." And we go to lunch and we're talking about sports. And then after lunch, they want to the bishop wants to drive to this house that has an open house for realtors, and it's
Hmm.
right next door to one of my sources to for Empire of the Wheel. I mean, right next door. And it was made clear to me, see, we even know who you're talking to.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and that was through things they said. But when we pulled up to that house, I was like, okay, I get it. Because the investigation had to do with old money here in San Bernardino.
Right.
And
Hmm.
it still doesn't get taken seriously.
Right.
I was Rick Spence and I, the first book, we were the first guys, people at all to write about this case in like 97 years, and
Right.
still this valley ignores it.
Hmm.
The
Um,
mayor got pissed off at me when
yeah.
I met with him and showed him a copy of the book. He was like, "Why do you want to bring up this stuff?" I'm
You
like,
gotta
"This
love
happened."
pissing off the right people.
Right?
Right.
It's like this happened 100 years ago. But it,
Hmm.
it really it bothered him. And this is a guy that knew my dad like 30 years before, but he was wow. Anyway, again, I digress
Uh,
with my bullshit, but
don't feel bad. I met a wandering bishop too. He claimed Hillary Clinton backed into his car, then she wanted him to pay for it.
they're all
Thomas
over.
Beckham?
And they're not all evil people, folks. Don't
Yeah.
think that I think that. There's some very good people that are
Well,
happen to be Episcopi Vagans. It's
right. The one I met wouldn't shut up about Jack Martin.
yeah.
Jack Martin killing people and Jack Martin doing this and that.
Well,
I had to get,
Tuttle in the show is very much because here's the thing. Uh, uh, here's the thing about the Episcopi Vagans, the wandering bishops, is a lot of guys that are serious about pursuing ritual magic and things like that. They seek out being consecrated in this because when you're a wandering
Mhm.
bishop, you're consecrated by an authentic consecration line,
Hmm.
but you're not recognized by the churches, particularly the Vatican. The Vatican hates this thing.
Right.
But Tuttle is very much the type that would be a wandering bishop. Of course, his character from coming from the dark perspective.
Right.
Um, so anyway, what do you think about that, Dana? Has that ever popped up in your research or anything in your research on analysis on True Detective at all, the wandering bishop thing?
Not the Wandering Bishop thing, because I did a very extensive New Orleans focused episode from Garrison's perspective in regards to the process. So
Uh-huh.
I have studied Wandering
Oh
Bishops
yeah,
and that element
absolutely. In that
historically,
milieu.
and it's such a fascinating topic to me. I hadn't really considered Tuttle in that way. I do think that it tracks. Um, Something, and this is going to be like the last thing that I pull from my notes, but it's something that you just said, Todd, that went like ding, ding, ding in my head. Okay, so you're talking about the play in The Yellow King, right?
Hmm.
Or The King in Yellow.
Yeah.
So with the play, I think that another nod that Pizzolatto is taking from Thomas Ligotti, and this is just a brief paragraph that I would like to read. So, and this is in the opening of the book where he's kind of laying out this concept, where he's laying out this argument in regards to if the supernatural exists or not. He says, whether or not there are really manifestations of the supernatural, they are horrifying to us in concept, since we think ourselves to be living in a natural world which may be a festival of massacres, but only in a physical rather than a metaphysical purport. This is why we routinely equate the supernatural with horror. And a puppet, because he's talking about if we noticed a puppet in horror movies, you often see there's a puppet in an attic and it's dark and it scares you until you turn the light on. But if a puppet actually looked like a human, if it was soft and if it was kind of plump and it wasn't this hard wood, right? So he says, and a puppet possessed of life would exemplify just such a horror because it would negate all conceptions of a natural physicalism and affirm a metaphysics of chaos and nightmare. It would still be a puppet, but it would be a puppet with a mind and a will, a human puppet, a paradox more disruptive of sanity than the undead. But that is not how they would see it. Human puppets could not conceive of themselves as being puppets at all, not when they are filled with a consciousness that excites in them the unshakable sense of being singled out from all other objects in creation. Once you begin to feel you are making a go of it on your own, that you are making moves and thinking thoughts which seem to have originated within you, it is not possible for you to believe that you are anything but your own master. I think that that's also playing on the concept of, are you a puppet? Or are you this human, right? Like, is this
Hmm.
real? Is this not real? This whole
Right.
concept of consciousness is sort of this sin. It's not supposed to exist. This is essentially nature committing a crime against itself. I think that also plays into the concept of the play. Obviously, there is the case, the genealogy, but also Russ's worldview of how he views everything. Are you really real? Are you your own person? Or
Hmm.
are you just a puppet that has consciousness that you're not supposed to have, and therefore you think that you are real and you cannot grasp anything else? And that is the true horror, the true insanity of existence.
I that makes a lot of sense. That's interesting.
It,
Like to
it
fathom that. Wow.
uh, is there a thread, therefore, and think of Marty in this role? Is there kind of a dark Pinocchio element running through?
Yes.
Ah,
Yes.
Mm.
Very much
okay.
so. Yeah, he focuses quite a bit, and I mean that was kind of long, but I do want to like really highlight the Pizzolatto angle. But yes, there
Hmm.
is a dark Pinocchio element where it's either seen as sort of this fun thing, but it's never really a person. It's always being controlled by a human, but ultimately it's puppets are always disconcerting to people. People are always off put by puppets and they can't really explain why,
Right,
right? And so
right,
he's
right.
laying out the argument of the why.
Hmm. That's
Okay.
interesting. That's
Please
interesting.
feel free to go on as long as you want because your input, I think, is probably way
Yeah.
more enlightening and interesting than anything I'm saying. So,
No, no,
you, the
I mean
audience.
Same
that's
here.
I mean, I think that I don't want to go into anything in episode 2 because
Right.
that
Right.
is
Yeah.
really where we're going to be getting
Yeah.
into Carcosa and the yellow. There's
Right.
so much there that we're going to be able to come back and touch on this. It's just I think that because a lot of people had not heard of people that have contacted me, and funny enough, when the first show premiered, somebody that's one of my patrons was in the chat, and they were actually a researcher for Thomas Ligotti for this book, so they know him and they're actually friends with him. And he confirmed in the chat that, like, yeah, there was a bit of back and forth in regards to possible litigation in regards to plagiarism. Obviously that did not come to be. There was some sort of agreement that was reached, right?
Mhm.
But when I want to highlight these things because I think that we have Pizzolato's image of what he's envisioning as this all encompassing sort of different world. Because when you're watching True Detective, I think it's the music lets you know that you're about to go on this journey, and then you are entering this different world where you're moving between Rust and Marty in these different ways. I think that you're also feeling all of their emotions. I feel like for me, Marty brings this sort of like laid back, get your feet back on the ground, you can touch the grass and you know that you're okay, and a little bit of humor to it. And
Mhm.
I think that
Yeah.
Rust is more of the nihilism,
Mhm.
tortured spirit, discomfort, distrust, kind of anti authority, even though he's in a role of authority. But with his worldview and the world that Pizzolatto is creating, it's not just Carcosa, it's not just the King in Yellow, it is so much of the conspiracy against the human race. And
Mhm.
I think that this whole case is a massive conspiracy, right? And so I think it's very
Right.
appropriate for him to also adopt Lagotti's argument in this book for Russ' character.
Hmm. I would agree. I would agree. The last track that we hear in the show, as sort of Marty says, start asking the right questions, right?
Mhm.
I love that track. That is by, if in
Now,
case you guys are wondering,
you got to
it's
say it right, Todd, when you refer to that line. It's
okay, go for it.
start asking the right fucking questions.
It's so
Right,
good.
right. Anywho, that is young men dead.
Yep.
Hmm.
The Black Angels.
Yep.
Yeah. I just learned how to read. So, I've been sounding things out. I've been getting pretty good at it.
Cool.
This whole time in California, I've been pretending, but now I'm just like really trying.
No, I mean the soundtrack is absolutely excellent. I think
Yeah.
that he does such a good job of bringing in. Ooh, now I'm not going to be able to remember it. It's something City Shouters. Hold on, because
City
I've I've used them
Scalders.
before. So it's the really old time gospel religious music where it's just them hooting and hollering and you can hear them kind of just like beating with like wooden spoons. It's the combination of all of it ties in the culture.
It's
Yeah,
not the
isn't that segment when they're on the highway driving to the
Yep.
cat church? Yeah.
Yep.
oh,
And then
okay.
they pepper it in other elements when they're driving. I
Yeah.
feel like it's almost peppered in certain scenes depending on where they're going, right?
Right.
Like, and so I think that that's an appropriate song because that group specifically, they do a lot of like that really old Southern gospel music, and they're
Mhm.
really
Yeah.
talented. But I think that he uses that music to kind of signify, like, all right, we're going into the cut now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to go figure some stuff out from the local stuff that
Here we
these other
go.
cops clearly have not looked into by
Mhm.
what the cat
Um,
priest tells us, and the crotchety old man that's standing outside that's talking about the Fontenot girl, but you could tell he doesn't trust the cops. Like,
yeah.
Right.
you could tell that all these people, they're like, what the hell are these two cops doing around here asking questions?
Right.
I, I
They've
like
had some
how
bad experiences.
I like how the director, because there's a long silence before that guy answers him about, oh, they had a place down the
Yep.
road. And I can't remember if there's any voiceover. It seems like there's this long silence, and you're wondering, well, what's going through their minds? Is this guy, clearly they think that this
Mhm.
guy, at that point you're wondering who had something to do with this. That's, you're just wondering everybody you talk to could they've been involved. Dana, I can't remember. Have you spent time in much time in New Orleans? Or did you live back there or anything?
I've spent quite a bit of time there. Yeah, I've spent quite a bit of time in Louisiana, and that's why and I have loved ones that live there, so that's
Yeah.
why it's a place that I'm always keeping tabs on because I don't trust any of the
Right?
current, machinations of power within New
Yeah.
Orleans
And
at all.
we've got Todd who lives in Tennessee, and you guys all know my connection to Alabama and Georgia. Do you think people who have spent a lot of time and lived back there in the Southeast, is there something about True Detective season one that really excites us a little more than people who've never spent any time back there in the South or around that?
Yeah,
No,
well, people up north sort of have their kind of own preconceived notions of what the South is like,
Yeah.
and they don't really understand it, or they don't really grasp it until they come here. I don't
Uh,
think. Tennessee itself is changing because there's a lot of trans. It's like
yeah.
I'm a unicorn because I'm a native Tennessean. There's so many people now from other places coming here because it's like Nashville's set this big hot spot. But like once you start going deep into the South, like really deep into the South, it's like being on in a different planet with different rules. And buddy, you better follow those rules or there's going to be
Yeah.
serious consequences.
I think I asked the wrong question, Dana. Is the question I meant to ask more, are there elements of the atmosphere of the story
Ah.
that those of us with experience in the South, maybe we get the depth more than those who haven't?
I
That
don't
might,
know. I got a comment today. I actually got a few comments today because I told folks that we were recording this because you guys have no idea how excited like my people have been. They're fucking stoked. They're like, we've been waiting, like we can't wait. This is gonna be awesome. And I think that there are a lot of people that I know where they're from. They're from the other side, West Coast,
yeah,
up north, and there's something that they see, even the new eyes, because a lot of people are watching this for like the first time, and they're like, oh, this is one of those shows that's a once in a lifetime type of thing as far
yeah,
as the first
Mhm.
season, right? And
Yeah.
then there are other people who are asking, what is up with the resurgence of, I mean, to me, I'm always like, I'm low key like Rust Cohle in my soul because I don't sleep either. But like, so I think that the resurgence that we see within like the zeitgeist of, social media and people making like these little clips and stuff is
mhm,
that a lot of people who some would call normies that are quote unquote waking up to a lot of the insane corruption
Yeah.
that
yeah,
involves a lot of the elements in True Detective. I think that people are starting to see like, oh, I see all these comments like True Detective season 1 was a documentary. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, yes, in its own way it really was. I just think
Right.
that I took other people a little bit more time to figure it
Mhm.
out.
Well, and we'll get to this when we finish
And
with the final episode analysis, but
Mhm.
I think there's more to that, right? Than
Right.
they might think,
Well,
because I
just
think the first episode of season two, they were clearly going in a season one type of direction, and you
right.
guys know my theory. They were told, "Stop it, no
Correct.
way in
Right.
hell," and it
Right.
got veered off. But
I the thing I find refreshing is how many like True Detective season one, it's turned a lot of people into occult crime researchers.
yeah,
And I
I
really like
agree.
that. I
Yeah.
really, really like that because there needs to be a lot more.
I think it also has made people consider the seriousness of the topic and that it's
Hmm.
not conspiratorial, but it will make you lose your fucking mind if you do it enough.
Thank you.
And I think that that is absolutely, what we see with Rust specifically. And then, obviously, as we discuss the series further on, we're going to see how it impacts other people as well. And also, like, it's something else for people to consider. I've had folks who have contacted me because like I uploaded the whole series onto my Patreon, and I believe so the next episode that we're going to talk about, I had a couple people message me and say, I'm actually stopping and I'm going to read The King in Yellow first before I
Hmm.
continue. And some of them are also reading Conspiracy Against the Human Race. I just think that this opens people up to literature and ideas that they would not
Absolutely.
otherwise consider.
An
Absolutely.
inhabitant of Carcosa.
Yeah.
They should read that one too.
Yeah,
That's a short one.
start with Bierce and then
Yeah.
go to Chambers and
Hmm.
it's it's there's just so much more
Hmm.
than we're even saying here. But I I like the things we're seeing in this, the dark Pinocchio thread, the Sherlock Holmes thing,
Hmm. There's
the
a
knowledge of the history.
there's an interesting Pinocchio thread in Dexter too.
Oh,
Like
sure, yeah.
yeah, because Dexter is essentially the doll and the code is Jimmy D. Cricket. Like Harry's code is like his artificial conscience, essentially.
Now, okay, we in a future episode, not
Hmm.
the first one, we we get the this will happen again and again and again moment.
Hmm. Right,
That first shot that we talked about,
right.
okay, where this time I'm wondering, wait a minute, is that actually Marty and Rust helping each other across the field? But it's like, no, when they were injured, they were in the Carcosa thing. I don't
Right.
want to spoil the
That's
ending too
right.
much. They weren't crossing a field. So is that opening shot? I'm getting goosebumps throwing this at you guys know where I'm
Yeah.
going. Is that opening shot where the last time they did this ended?
I think that you might be onto something with that. I
Yeah.
actually think that you might actually be onto something with that. I'm gonna pull because I do a lot of video editing. I'm gonna pull that and I'm just gonna go frame by frame and see what I can find because
Yes,
I'm very
please.
curious. Yeah, I'll do it and I can slow it down and I can zoom in and all of that because it's and I think that that also speaks to the Ambrose Bierce, the whole like Carcosa, right? Like you're just kind
Yeah.
of you're stuck. It's a realization that you're stuck. And how many times have you woken up and like not realized that you are already crossed over and that you're already in this place, right? And so I
Right.
think that it hits on all of that. That's really interesting. It very well could be.
Well, and think of the in the show we learned that the Carcosa place the characters are referring to is the old fort, right?
Right.
Right.
Hmm.
Now, am I mistaken? Did they not refer to that as a Civil War era structure?
I believe that they did.
Okay, Ambrose Bierce is considered the greatest American Civil War veteran who wrote about the war.
Hmm.
The greatest writer who was a Civil War veteran writing it. So that might be um Pizzolato's Bierce reference also thrown in
Right.
there, not
Yeah.
just
Right.
Chambers' reference to Carcosa, but the Civil War thing. And when Bierce was on his tour, where he ended up going into Mexico and disappeared, he went through the South and visited all the old battlefields that he was a
Hmm.
part of those battles. So he goes through the South, and I'm wondering if that's a nod to Bierce
Hmm.
directly, the fact that that's an old Civil War fort, but then again, the pirate history with
Right.
New Orleans.
It's a lot like Savannah too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I've got family connection and history in Savannah, and my mom loves the place.
I do too. It's a cool little place to visit.
I've only been there a couple of times, and one of them was in childhood, so I have vague glimpses of it. But yeah, so I wonder if there is, could that first opening shot be, kind of a the end of the previous loop, and we're seeing the
It's
beginning.
yeah, I
I
love
think,
that.
Excellent.
It's very Twin Peaks.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree. And I think that
yeah,
Pizzolatto is that purposeful that I
Right?
wouldn't put it past him to do that. Like, it's everything is if you sit there and rewatch it enough times, it's like you're going to notice enough things where you could make an argument. Whether he would admit it or not is irrelevant to me because,
right.
again, it's from the perception of the viewer, right? And
Mm.
what you
Yeah.
know and what you study. And I mean, even with the gospel music, so I found it. So it's the McIntosh County Shouters. So that song
Ah,
is Sign of the Judgment. That's the first
yeah.
gospel song
Cool.
that we well, so the McIntosh County Shouters. So that's the first gospel song that we hear,
Uh-huh.
Sign of the Judgment. And I
Okay.
think that that is also very indicative of what is coming as far as like judgment of,
Oh,
in my
yeah.
opinion, the Tuttle Ministries, right?
Yes.
I think that the
Yes.
Tuttle Ministries is going to face judgment that, they did not necessarily foresee coming. I think that everything that Pizzolatto does is by design. There are no accidents. I think
Right.
that
Right,
whether he's trying to give a hint to something that's coming later on or sort of foreshadowing,
right.
when you sit there and look at it. I mean, even the song at the end, the lyrics to it, it all really does tie in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, Again, I love when this happens. I'll say it 1,000 times every time it happens. I never thought of this before, but Rust is Bierce, and here's
yeah,
why he's Bierce. Bierce was a very acerbic, kind of negative guy.
yeah,
Okay. Rust, we know, is Rust, right?
yeah.
And we've already talked about, the Civil War stuff and the fort and everything. But here's the thing. Um, Bierce entered Mexico, the trip in which he disappeared, through El Paso,
Hmm.
Texas. Rust lost himself in Texas.
Yeah.
Correct.
Rust, his marriage broke apart and it was tragic for him. He lost a child.
Hmm.
Bierce, when his marriage fell apart, it really, really affected him deeply. And they lost a child. That in adulthood was when that child was killed. And I think another one died younger. But so here we have parallels between Russ Cole and Ambrose Bierce right there. And I never thought about that until this discussion. So
Hmm.
as it turns out, Bierce, as we look at this, is increasingly well represented
Hmm.
in True Detective season one.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I'd agree 100%.
Absolutely. And I think
Hmm.
that Todd, with the song that you referenced, the Young Men Dead, the Black Angels at the end, as far as, the opening song, like that's the intro that you don't skip, right? And it's such an
Right.
Right.
appropriate song. But even with that song, that is the first I wouldn't it's the first real tell that we get where we
Yeah.
really see Rust, where he's like, start asking the right fucking questions. And
Yep.
when it hits the lyrics to the song, it's fire for the hills, pick up your feet and
Yeah.
let's go.
Yep.
Ahead for the hills, pick up steel on your way. And when you find a piece of them in your sight, fire at will. Don't you waste no time. Another thought of the unaware, addiction in disguise with a drop of blood. You will take them out for me. Fire from the hills, pick up the speed, and let's go. It's like there's all these little nods to everything that's
Yeah.
going on. It's like it's not fire in the hills, it's fire in the sugarcane field, right? That's
Yeah.
talking about addiction, all of this stuff. It's again, I
Fire.
think it speaks to Pizzolatto's purposeful choices.
Right. Fire
Well,
from the high ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
think too of the opening song. Uh, I grew up with um in country music, the Western part of that
Hmm.
was still
Yeah.
very Marty Robbins and all of that.
Hmm.
And the opening song, when you listen to that, the instruments, that's a
Hmm.
very Western
Oh yeah.
Oh
song
yeah.
with there's the Spanish Western cowboy
Yeah.
influence and
Hmm.
such. And think about it again, it represents Rust. He is the Texan
Right.
in the
Yeah,
story.
the song is almost more Texan than it is
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Louisianian.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
what this is True Detective also a Western in that dark, almost Cormac
Oh yeah.
McCarthy tradition.
Yeah, most definitely. I would agree with that. 100%. And once again, that is the handsome family who did the theme song. The name of the theme song is um oh, No Road Nearby or something like something
Isn't
like
it
that.
funny how we love the song, we have it
Yeah.
in our minds? It's like,
We can
what's the
all hear
title
it
of it?
right now.
I don't know.
Hold
Far
on,
from any
I'll
road.
get the right name. Hold on a
Far from
second
any
here.
road.
Far from any road. That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just, so
I also think that it kind of speaks to because, the descriptions and the lyrics, it's kind of describing the desert almost.
yeah, oh,
It's
Yeah.
also
absolutely.
it's also like nodding to that Rust and Marty are both kind of like these
Cowboys.
these like cowboys. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that
for
they're
sure.
cowboys, you
Oh,
know.
wait. Remember, wasn't Marty a rodeo guy for a
Yes, he
while there?
was. Yep.
Yes, he
Yes, he was.
was.
Yes, he was.
He was a
Yes, he
rodeo guy,
was.
Yes, he
so this is a
was.
Western. I'll be damned. True Detective is, you know,
It's an occult crime western.
The best fucking Western I've ever seen.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Oh,
If
it's
only
I
High Plains Drifter stick with the horror movie script.
Yeah, High Plains Drifter. Well, hey, we need to analyze that one too because
Yeah,
I mean, who knew that all these years it took me to figure out that Clint Eastwood had done a horror film. And then I saw him in an interview with James Lipton, Actor Studio, in which he admits it that, oh yeah, it's a ghost story. I'm like, yes, yes,
I
but of
was
course a
right.
thousand people before me knew that. But
yeah.
um
Well,
so yeah.
something else that I'm thinking of because you just
Hmm.
brought it up. So I was looking for just little clips from either that time or now with Woody and Matthew McConaughey, and I found one, and it's Matthew McConaughey, and I thought it was so weird. He said this was, I think, like a year and a half or 2 years ago. He did this random interview, and he said he was asked what was one of the most impactful roles that he's ever played. And he talks about being Rust Cole. And he said, there are times that I miss it. He goes, it was very lonely living as Rust Cole. And he goes, but there was a sense of peace to it. And sometimes I wish I could go back to it. And I just thought that that was fascinating
Hmm.
because, again, I read conspiracy, years and
Yeah,
years
yeah.
ago, and coming back and revisiting it and then bringing
I
in
could
all of
see
these.
I could see there being like a sort of confidence in it.
It's a confidence and it's
Yeah.
also the comfort of I
Thinking you
obviously
know
don't.
everything.
Well, it's that like I don't fully endorse it, like, but I also
Yeah,
think that for a nonfiction philosophical book, Thomas Ligotti did a really fantastic job because it is a
yeah.
nonfiction and it is
Right.
a philosophical book. But I think that the comfort that Rust carries in his character of, we should not exist, and he has this level of peace with that. I
Hmm.
think that there would be comfort. It would be isolating, but it would also be very comforting. But also, it's going to drive Marty absolutely fucking insane.
Right, right.
Yeah. There's also the element of, I think McConaughey recognizes that this is his Captain Kirk. That
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, of course I mean, Shatner. How many times did he go back to playing that iconic character because no one else could do it?
Right. Well,
I mean,
I think
they'll try, but no one
yeah,
else
I
will
think there
ever.
needs to be, well, here's what I think. I don't want to ruin something that's perfect, but I think there needs to be a spin-off series that just focuses on the Spiral cult. And it could have new detectives in it or whatever, but bring back Marty and Russ as consultants of some sort.
Well, they gave a hint of that in season three. They've teased us.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
bastards have teased us. And season four, I mean, a lot of people came away saying not only was it they teasing us, they were mocking us
Right.
Correct.
because it got out that the people behind season four hated the fandom of season one, and
Right.
they hated all the people that love Rust and Marty.
Yeah.
So it was an open mockery of that.
Is
Yeah.
the woke folk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
it was.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The woke folk.
Absolutely. When I
And now
saw it,
and
I
now
was
and now they've got season 5 and Nicolas Cage who like, who's super cheap to
I
get
forgot
now.
about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And hopefully, Goodwill's trying to get Nicolas Cage right now. So hopefully he'll come work for us. You know.
You mean to do like promo spots and stuff?
No, no, no. To work for us, to take donations, to
just the
mop
stock
floors,
shelves.
Oh,
stock shelves.
I
He's
get
so
it.
cheap we
Okay.
can afford him.
Mr. Walter
Goodwill
was
can
taking
afford
things
him.
seriously. Ooh.
Yeah,
Well, I feel like the season four, because I did watch it, and the only reason why I watched it, so my best friend, she was like, "Oh, it looks like it's gonna kind of, hint towards season one," and I'm like, "Okay."
Right?
And I think, I think that I wasn't completely dissatisfied with the first episode, but then it just all
Right.
went downhill. And it's
yeah,
like season four is like the DEI version of season one, and so
Oh,
I
yeah,
yeah.
don't. I don't think that these people can be trusted with a
yeah.
remake, with
Right.
anything that would even be in another storyline, a spin-off. It's like
Yeah.
it's one of those things where if it's not broke, don't fix it, just leave it
Right.
alone.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And the fact is, like, that there's although they're never gonna do it, but the tunnels are still out there. That spiral
Yeah.
keeps showing up, and it would be interesting to, like, now there's a tunnel running for president or something like that. I don't know. That's just where my imagination goes.
The Yellow King is still out there.
Yeah, the Yellow King, right?
Yeah, well, and I mean, what his cousin was a governor in the first season, right? It's always there, kind of looming in the hierarchy of the
Yeah.
structure of this, area of Louisiana. It's
Mhm.
just it would have to be Pizzolatto, and it would
It'd
also
have to
have to
be
be the
Yes.
same director.
Yep.
They literally have to bring back everybody
You read my
because
mind.
everybody,
it's
Yeah.
exactly.
encompassing visually, auditory, emotions, the acting, everything. It's like
Hmm.
I don't know that you can recreate something that even though there was so many specific choices that were made that did
Hmm.
create this alternate world that you step into as a viewer, it's
Hmm.
like it's almost perfect by accident, like you said, lightning in a bottle,
Yeah.
where it's just like these great minds came together and had all these inspirations, and
Yeah,
the way that they captured it, it does suck you in every
yeah,
single time.
Yeah. I think really the best follow-up to it is going to be if I live to see it, I'm older than you guys. Um, who gets that light in a bottle inspiration from True Detective
right.
season one?
Hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
Because that what Pizzolatto wrote, what he and I can never get the karaoke what they did, that's it's like a perfect iteration of Chambers' work. Think about all the writers, Lovecraft,
hmm,
King, a whole bunch of pulp writers and horror writers in between them and others. But really, True Detective season one is the best distillation of Chambers' influence.
hmm,
And it's what, 100 and almost 120 years after
hmm.
Chambers, wrote his book.
Right,
Um,
right, right, right.
so, you know,
Absolutely. And I think
Yeah.
that with the King in Yellow as well, like, we discussed it earlier, sort of the beautiful poetry of death, right? Where the way that they're able to uh, state it so eloquently and in this way that it paints an image in your mind of like it's something beautiful, and the way that they take all of the terrible things from the entire show, like the entire case, and they make it into something beautiful in the intro. It's like you can't recreate it, guys. Like, sorry,
right.
it's already been done. It's
Yeah.
done.
Leave
It's
it
there
Right.
alone.
for
I
you.
think
Yeah,
you're
leave it
right about
alone.
that. And it's like picking a scab or whatever. I know I'm gonna friggin' watch season 5, and I'm
How
just
are they gonna,
expecting it to piss me off.
right? How are they gonna trick us this time?
And they will. Oh,
You know
they
what they're gonna
will.
do? Because it's Jamaica, Queens, New York, they're
Yeah.
gonna do like subtle little Son of Sam style like references, and we're just
Don't
gonna get
start.
so excited
You're
and
you're gonna
like
see you're gonna see McConaughey and Harrelson on a subway, like, eating pork buns or something they got from a street
and
stand or a hot
graffiti,
dog.
yeah,
Hey
graffiti at
guys,
the
they're in it.
spiral. There's gonna be like graffiti at the spiral and like
Yeah,
German shepherds and
they're just gonna
yeah,
bitch slap us and laugh. We're gonna be there watching every episode. Please get better. Please get better.
yeah, please,
If they
It was
start
please,
talking about Taxi Driver, that's when I'll know to turn it off.
Yeah,
oh,
it's wow. I mean, season 4 was the worst Scooby-Dooing of anything that
yeah. They
I've
turned
seen and
Travis
watched.
Cole into a ghost,
It
and
was
yeah,
it was the DEI version of season 1. It
Yeah,
was, I mean, whatever. I have some really hot takes on like I'm very anti-feminist, so whatever, but like so I was already just rejecting the concept of this whole like girl boss out here doing the most, and I'm
yeah.
like, well, let's see how they play it, and they fucking destroyed it. They fumbled it, and it's like
yeah.
this is why they should stay in the kitchen. Just kidding, sort of. I digress.
It was
That's all I have to
pretty.
add.
We might have to do a whole show on that.
Oh,
Yeah, it
oh,
was
on fem.
so
Oh,
bad.
I would love to because I could also. I mean, we could just do like one episode where we just kind of talk about season 4 because I know that
Yeah,
there's
Yeah.
a lot of talk about a book that's very popular now, partly because of the author's appearance on Joe Rogan. It's called Occult Feminism, but there is a book that predates that from the late 90s that I read called Monsters from the Id. And in that book, it's a male author, and he discusses how essentially, like Mary Shelley, Frankenstein, the Enlightenment era, and how all of that ties into feminism. I've had very, very, very strong opinions about feminism because of this dude for a really long
Well,
time. So we could definitely knock that out in like one.
have you read Scott DeHart's um Shelley Unbound?
No.
Ha ha ha. It deconstructs the feminine mythos about Mary Shelley. She did not write that book,
Oh no, I know she didn't. Oh yeah, no,
right?
that whole story is total bullshit. Monsters from the Id goes into like
Oh,
all of that,
okay.
but it brings in the occult element, arguing
Okay.
that the nature and the roots of feminism are actually rooted in occultism starting in the Enlightenment era,
mhm.
which there's
I
a
gotta read
new
this.
book that's out here now, but I had read Monsters from the Id many years ago.
I'm gonna read that.
And for me, I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. And so in my head, when I was watching season 4, I was like, they're going to screw this up. They're going to screw this up, but I
Oh
want to
yeah.
give it a chance. And then they did. And it's
Piss you off.
sorry. If you leave it up to women, they're going to fuck it up, guys. Sorry.
One
Yeah.
comment on the Scooby-Dooing aspect. Okay, again, not to spoil things for people who actually, if there's anyone out there who's not watched season 1, but even though we're offered very human villains and very human actions, you come away from season 1 still feeling like you watched something supernatural, so
Hmm.
something otherworldly, something
Yeah.
occult. They don't you don't come away feeling Scooby-Dooed like
Hmm.
you do with season 4.
Right.
I mean,
Correct.
there's all this weird bodies frozen together, and there's
Yeah.
this weird, and it's just those gals who
Hmm.
ganged up and taught those fellas a
Girl
lesson.
boss.
Yeah, and it's like
Hmm.
the ultimate Scooby-Dooing. But with season 1, you still, for instance, I still cling to the idea that Rust, seeing the swirling stars, he was seeing a portal in another dimension. Now there's realist materialists who, no, hey, that was just a vision in his head. I come away going, no, he really saw that. What do
Well,
you think about that?
there's also the very raw elements of the murders themselves. So Lake
Hmm.
Charles, the
Right.
way that she's uh,
Yeah.
staged, and then in the sugarcane fields, the first crime,
Yeah.
it's we have a consistent theme where we're seeing that this staging, this ritualistic staging of these victims that takes a lot of effort, and it's all
Yeah.
very purposeful, and the devil nets are, I would imagine that those take a while to put together because when they're in the coroner's office and Russ like gets down on the table level and he's looking at it and you see all these little things and not trinkets, but little things that are tied to it and hanging from it on the devil nets
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
And so I think that when it ends and we don't really have an answer as to their root theology, this group, right? Like
Yeah.
we have all these sort of disparate places that we're pulling from and these disparate timelines. I think that that adds to the mystery of it and the supernatural element of it
Yeah.
because it's very clearly people that are practicing black magic, some
Right.
form of
Right.
black magic, right?
Right.
And we
Right.
see the
Right.
one side, but not the
Uh,
actual acting out of the crimes themselves.
right.
And so what are they doing in the commission of all of that?
Now, I've researched a lot of occult crimes. I think it may have been one of the Fall River murders, but
Todd,
I
all we
have
see
been.
is your elbow. Move into your camera.
Oh, oh, sorry, sorry. I was trying to
Nice
get.
nice weenus, Todd.
Thank
Yeah,
you. I love that word, and I freak people out
yeah.
all the time. I have two
Venus was
weenuses. We all
almost
do.
my first name. Yeah, old Venus Wood. There he goes.
Stop.
But anyways, what I was gonna say is, um, I'm gonna figure it out because I think the way that the woman is staged in the Lake Charles murder actually happened with fishing line.
Okay.
In the actual occult murder, it may be one of the Fall River murders. It may be a different one, but I'll try and
Oh,
have that answered by episode 2, the next
um,
one we do.
I wanted to throw out that when we were talking about it earlier, there's the cross and crucifix presence and symbolism through the whole thing. You guys remember, from going back to Sunday school, that graphic where they would show the chasm and the cross fits in the chasm and bridges you from one side to the other.
Right.
And there she is strung up on a bridge. I'm wondering if it's because remember, Ponchatouli was the real case that was an inspiration for True Detective, and Ponchatouli was a church school, a Sunday school, so to speak,
Right.
steroids,
Speaking
and
of
that's
the
a
cat,
Sunday school image.
speaking of the cats, they would like kill cats as part of the
Oh, that's
Hosanna
right.
preschool, and like sprinkle drink like drip that blood on the babies and the little kids and all that stuff.
Uh, Dana, one time we should have you on to talk more about this vampire thing because last year at Contact in the Desert, um, uh, there was a gentleman who approached um, our former sometime co-host on the show and told us about the vampire culture in Stockton, California. And I've since had people come and say, no, 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 it's not real. It's all fake. But it was still intriguing. So
Well,
anyway, I don't want to divert.
Well, no, I mean, I feel like we've touched on I think we've more than covered. I think you're right. I think that our approach to this is unique. I think that I'm not saying that the other takes out there about True Detective,
Oh,
but
they're
like
fantastic. It's
have
wonderful to
they
watch them
done
all.
episode by episode, everybody? No. Like I
That's
think that we're
right.
bringing a very unique perspective, and I
Mhm.
do think that there should be a consideration of all of these weird sort of belief systems and groups within Louisiana because I was out and it was near Halloween time and it's interesting and the only reason why I bring this up is because this coming Halloween they are going to do a very specific event for vampires in New Orleans.
Hmm.
um but when I was down there, it was like a really cool shoe shop and whatever, like the chicks that were running the front desk, like they were hot goth chicks. And I was like, shit, I'm gonna go in there and talk to them, right? And so my dad was outside smoking a cigarette, and somebody came from the back and it looked like they were coming upstairs and they had a drink for me and it just looked like a pretty girly sort of martini, and I went to take it and my dad like comes in behind me. I didn't even hear him, and he's like, "No." And he pulls me out of the store and I was like, "Wait, I want to buy these shoes." And he pulls me outside and he goes, "These are real vampires. Like, they're going to try to get you intoxicated, if not now, and have you come back." He goes, "You guys can't come back here tonight when you come out partying." He goes, "This is a real vampire coven that's running out here." And again, there's a whole lot of stuff that I could talk about going on in Louisiana, not relevant, but there are boots on the ground rumors, stuff that's being reported of people being found with their
Th-
blood drained, and it's not a unique phenomenon there.
This was your dad? Did
Yeah,
I hear you right?
yeah.
What did he do? How did he know this?
My dad, when this was a long time ago, but my dad, he makes interesting friends, and God bless him. I love him very much. He is one of those people that will walk up to anybody and say, "Well, Jesus loves you, God loves you," and he has no problem if he thinks that you are in some type of occult practice. He has no problem saying that you're going to burn in hell if you don't get saved.
Oh no.
And I love it. I think that it's great,
Yeah,
but he had been around there long enough at that time. He's not
to
there
know
anymore, but
what's
that's who I was visiting. And this was, like I said, a long time ago because I still partied, right? And so, like, I had to have the sit down of like, I can't drive because the law's there because of the Napoleonic Code. It's different with you're allowed to drink and drive. These things are legal there. It's just if you get caught and the cop thinks that you're too intoxicated, it's not about blood alcohol level. They have drive-through chicken and daiquiri restaurants, and it's the most amazing thing ever. It sounds as great as it is.
how's the chicken? Oh, I'll bet it's wonderful.
Oh, it's Louisiana fried chicken, dude. Come on now. It
Oh,
slaps. And then you get the really tall daiquiris and they give it to you
yeah.
in the drive-through and it feels
Oh,
illegal. And it's but it's not. And they can fine you. They can actually arrest you at certain points depending on how many times you're caught doing it.
mm,
When you're put if you drop your cigarettes out in public, like if you put it out on the ground and you leave
mhm.
it, you can get fined hundreds of dollars for each one, but they can also arrest you. It's just dependent on the cop. And just like how we see in the next episode, we'll be seeing avoyals, right? And it's those, they don't have the normal due process like in other states where like you're guaranteed to get in front of a judge within 24 to 36 hours depending on when you're detained. Like
Yeah.
if it's on a Friday, you're going to see the judge no later than Monday. It's not guaranteed like that down there. From what I understand, from what people have told me in the research that I've done, it's like you go in and you might get out in a decent amount of time or you might not. So I that's why if I go back, I'm glad that I am sober, many years sober now, but I was risking it for the biscuit to party down there, and yeah, it's a very different place.
Yeah. My grandfather used to go to New Orleans every year.
Did he?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. He was a big fan of like the jazz clubs and stuff like that.
Oh
And
yeah, they have the best
like
music and the best
hmm
food.
it's
With
like
my
one of his
interests,
place to go.
I cannot believe, and with my interest in my family history in the South, I cannot believe that I have not been to New Orleans yet.
Yeah, that's insane that you've never been.
It's weird. I
Yeah.
wonder. I wonder if there's some karmic reason that I have not been to New Orleans.
Well, I mean, besides not having like the best food ever, I would
Oh,
say, you
I
know, you
know,
gotta
I know,
go.
I know. I gotta
It's a
get
very
down there.
special place in the world. Yeah, it's probably
Yeah.
like my favorite place in the world, but it's also a place that it's like you don't want to fuck around and find out there.
Yeah.
Would you go back?
Oh, I would love to. I just, I mean, I have other loved ones and people that I know that are there that it's like, it's not really like when my dad was there, it was sure, like I'm gonna go spend time with my pop,
Yeah.
He took me to do some of the more touristy things, and I've been to the plantations and had the mint juleps out on the porch and all that. And then also, he's taken me into a lot of the places that are actually featured in True Detective season 1. So I've
Oh,
been out there in the cut, in the sticks. And that's why I know that a lot of it is super authentic, and
yeah.
also that is absolutely where you get the best food.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Well, maybe down the road and then sometime semi near future, we three should make a pilgrimage, a trek to and
Mhm.
do episodes from New Orleans.
Oh, fuck yeah,
Yeah.
dude, I'm down. Plus, I got a lot of things I need to say to Elon Musk. So, yeah.
Is that where Elon Musk lives?
He's doing a lot of shady stuff with these data centers, and he's opening up a tunnel system via his boring company under the city of New Orleans.
Yeah.
And he allegedly is or like, I don't know if you would call this part shareholder, stakeholder. He has a large stake in, I believe it's called the Amelia Bell
I see.
Casino, the boat casino, which is very Ozarks. And it actually looks like the boat casino from Ozarks. And he may or may not have, I mean, I'll say allegedly, a very deep, long relationship with the current Marcello family in New Orleans. So
Oh.
I have a lot of things to say to that guy if we go, but hell yeah, I'm down.
Yeah, yeah. Can my personal assistant come with me?
Absolutely. Who is it?
Okay. Nicholas Cage. He's been on my payroll for the last 6 months.
That's great. He can be the
Yeah.
guard dog.
Oh yeah.
So we're down to we got about 8 minutes. And what would you two like to say in wrapping up about our discussion on episode 1 and maybe previewing our next discussion on episode 2? Dana, you go first.
Well, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this. Again, this is something that's very near and dear to my heart, and I appreciate that you guys are going on this journey with me. This is the most fun project that I've like collaborative
Oh,
project that I've
wow.
done in a long time. Like it's been a hot minute since I've like been really stoked about something, because this is something that I
Cool.
nerd out about in my downtime. And I think that, with that groundwork, people should consider going and reading Ambrose, going and, at least like perusing through The King in Yellow, Thomas
Hmm.
Ligotti, kind of getting an idea of what, you're working with if you have not read any of that literature,
Right.
because that is all laying the groundwork for the unraveling of the literature sort of aspect and the philosophical aspect. We're going to see it play out in real time in the next episode. So I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Todd.
I'm super excited for the next episode. It's just gonna get more intense from here, guys. I think for the next one, I'm gonna try if I can figure it out because I am what that you would call tech tarded. Figure out how to do screenshots because there's certain things that are in the house in you know,
Yes.
Marty Hart's
Yes.
house that people really need to pay attention to.
I
Yeah.
got you. I got you,
Yeah,
boo. I got that because I have some other stuff that we also need to look at. So
yeah,
yes, I will make sure that we have
hmm
those ready.
Cool.
yeah.
Very cool. And yeah, I can't wait to get to um I would like to find if I'm pretty sure that Pizzolatto is a fan specifically of the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society's production. They did a 20 style silent movie of Call of Cthulhu. And the interrogation scene of the one guy where Rust is in there and the guy's saying, I can tell you things. I can tell you about the Yellow King, and he starts smacking him around. If you get your hands on the Call of Cthulhu silent film, again, made by the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society, and watch that and tell me if you disagree. It's very much a nod
Mhm.
towards how they handled the interrogation scene in that film because the character's talking about the cult, which is in Louisiana and New Orleans, that the police officer witnesses all the horrible dark things they do and on and so forth. But again, that's beyond the
Right.
next episode we're going to talk
That's
about.
gonna have to be our homework, Dana. We're gonna have to listen to the Call of Cthulhu for the next episode, or whenever we do get to that episode.
Yes, absolutely. I think that we have homework, and I think that the viewers have homework.
Oh yeah.
I'm certainly not expecting anybody to read all three of these books. Lagodi, I won't lie. Yeah, you'll
I want
kind
to
of
read
be
that.
having that Rust Cohle vibe of, fuck everything and
Mhm.
everything is malignant. But I do think that people should consider just taking a dip into it if you have the time, because it is going to really bring about a richness and a light to the entire series. And I think
Okay.
also it kind of highlights, like, the first episode, the long, bright, dark. It's like, is it the long, bright, dark because, like, Rust is dark, Marty's kind of light, and it's long, and it's kind of highlighting that element that we're going to see play throughout.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting too. If you look at something real that's really bright, you want to close your eyes.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
So
looking too directly into the sun.
yeah, yeah. I did that one time. Yeah. Make sure there was no funny business going on up there.
That's right.
Took some
Got to keep an eye on
binoculars and
things.
almost
What
started a war with the sun, just throwing sticks at it.
what are the other two books? The one about the late 90s, you said the occult background of feminism.
So that one is new. That is Rachel Wilson. I did a so that one, that came out recently. She was
Okay.
recently on Joe Rogan. So I have not read her book. I cannot comment to Here's the thing, is that those elements that I've heard discussed in her discussions on podcasts is things that I read in Monsters from the Id, which
Monsters from
again
the Ed,
was,
that's the
yeah,
one.
which was published by a male, and I believe it was the late 90s, very early 2000s.
Okay.
And again, it touches on essentially the Enlightenment era, and obviously there's lots of
Yes.
weird stuff going on in France, which is interesting when we consider what's going on in New Orleans. But yeah, that there
Yeah.
is a very occult nature to the feminist subversion of the West, one could call it.
Most definitely.
Oh, I love this stuff. I'm gonna read those books.
Hmm. And I'm gonna
Definitely.
see the movie Id.
Id.
Yeah,
This
it's the off-brand of It. There's Coca-Cola and Pepsi. There's It and
Gotcha.
Id.
Gotcha.
And
God.
they're gonna do a crossover. It's gonna be called It Id.
Oh, for those who keep hearing us talk about, everybody talk about Chambers, the King in Yellow, just be aware that it is a technically a collection
Hmm.
of supposedly disconnected stories, but the common thread is the reference to this mysterious figure,
Hmm.
the King in Yellow.
Yeah.
So just be aware of that. And if you're someone who's very
Yeah.
21st century airport fiction, post
Yeah.
Hemingway type stuff, grow up and read some real literature
Right.
and give this book a chance, give Chambers a chance, and
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 whatever you
expand your
do,
mind.
if you're as large as me, do not wear a yellow and black tracksuit and walk down the street. Because I did that once, and then kids tried to board me because they thought I was a bus.
Stop
Oh,
it, Todd.
Todd, stop it.
Stop.
You maniac. Okay. Well, folks, thanks for watching. Thanks for, as Dana said, starting this journey. Dana, thank you for doing this journey with us. And where can people find you?
Rotting Jewels, Dana Duda on Twitter or X, and What is the Process podcast, where you listen.